Can you actually take us through the signs of burnout, what they are?
Burnout doesn't happen overnight, suddenly I'm burnt out. It's a gradual thing. For me, there was firstly the obvious sign, which is I just started to get sadder and sadder and sadder. And like I said, it wasn't a thing that happened overnight. It was just a shift in my personality where I didn't really want to go out as much.
Sarah Grynberg is a keynote speaker, author, and mindset coach who empowers professional athletes, executives, and business owners to overcome unhelpful thinking and achieve greatness. She's the creator and host of the podcast A Life of Greatness, where she has interviewed global icons, including Matthew McConaughey, Andrew Huberman, and Mel Robbins. Sarah also has a podcast series called Sarah's Thoughts, a companion program where she speaks about trending real-world topics from burnout and boundary setting to success, self-worth, and the power of perspective.
What do you think would be the best technique for motivation?
We find motivation when we're really following our purpose. You want to wake up in the morning because you have a purpose and you're motivated by something.
What does it mean to live a life of greatness?
Love that question. To me, a life of greatness is...
What's the one daily practice that you think changed your life more than anything else?
I would have to say it would be...
Welcome to Chief Life, the podcast that cuts the crap with science-backed insights on health, nutrition, and performance. Get expert advice, actionable tips, and everything you need to take control of your health and live your best life. Let's get started.
Hi Sarah, welcome to the Chief Life podcast. How are you today?
Good, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much for making the time for us. And I start straight away with the first question that I'm dying to hear. What does it mean to live a life of greatness?
Oh, love that question. To me, a life of greatness is living an authentic life, one that's true to yourself, and one which is very important that gives back to others. I think that we could look at our life and tick off all the things that we wanted to do as far as successes. But if we were doing that without helping anyone, there would only be a certain level of happiness. I think if we're able to give back to others and help them on their journey, then that's a truly fulfilling, great life.
Yeah, that's a beautiful description. You have a podcast and also a book called A Life of Greatness. What was the trigger for starting the podcast and writing the book?
So with my podcast, because that was obviously the first thing that I started 6.5 years ago, for me it came out of being completely burnt out. I was a breakfast radio producer, and at the time I had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and I was waking up at 3 a.m., 5 mornings a week, but I wasn't waking up to train or to go to the gym or to meditate and do some nice things. I was waking up to, jump into the world of news and current affairs and sports and entertainment. And also with this job, as being a producer, a breakfast producer, you're really on the whole day. So yeah, you might leave at a certain time, but you can't switch off. You need to be across everything that's going on. And one thing I've known as a mindset coach is when we're really ingesting a current affairs and the news and the darkness of the media the whole time, it's not good for your psyche. And that's what happened with me. I mean, at the time I thought I liked it, but I was watching the news up to I'm not exaggerating, 8 or 9 times a day, making sure I knew everything that was going on. And as we know with the news, it's 90% negative. So that was kind of coming into my psyche the whole time as well. The early mornings, the never switching off. And it culminated in me becoming extremely run down and then really, really burning out. And I got really sick one day with the flu, but it was a really bad flu. This was before COVID. And I couldn't go into work because I was so unwell. And I think it was the only day that I'd ever missed. And I had, when I'd gotten up, I'd gone to the couch, and I remember this like it was the other day because it was so pertinent in my mind because it was a really bad moment that I was so unwell. And I remember thinking, I don't know how my life became so empty. I had been chasing all these things like a great job and a good salary. And, I was working with some really great entertainers and going to these great parties, but I was so unfulfilled inside. And it was the moment of feeling so sick on the couch and being run down and burnt out that I realized that I was a shell of myself. I didn't really want to continue the rest of my life how I was. And it's funny, because in life, I truly think that we can either, in our dark nights of the soul, which this was, choose to move forward or take another route. And I thought, or continue on the same path. And I wanted to take another route. I wanted to make my life better. And so I had been kind of interested in personal development work and the mind-body connection and why some people are happier than others. So I thought, this is the time to really learn about this. And so I really dove in deep into personal development work. I got really into meditation, which was amazing for me because I had a mind that would just ruminate the whole time. So really understanding how the mind works, being able to go into the quiet space of meditation, realizing how the mind and the body are connected, finding out how and why some people are happier than others, and doing all that work, I started to transform as a person. And I really started to change. And I really love this quote, for change to occur, you need to change. And I did that because I think a lot of the time we read a book or we listen to a podcast and we understand what's going on, but we don't make any of those changes in our life. But for me, I had hit such rock bottom that I didn't want to go on being who I was. So to make changes to my habits and the way that I was living my life felt to me to be the only way to move forward. And it was so interesting, Veronica, because only after really a small period of time, it wasn't even long, I saw changes start to happen in my life, which gave me the comfort that really what I was doing was working. And then I went on and ended up moving into podcasting, and that's when my podcast, A Life of Greatness, I had the idea of it because I was producing other podcasts, and I was like, I need to help others on their journey and teach them what I've learned. And then many years later, my book, Living a Life of Greatness, was created through my work in podcasting and the great conversations I'd had with thought leaders, and also my own work as a mindset coach. So really, that's how everything came about. But it came through having a really heavy moment and being completely burnt out, and that then changing the direction of my life.
Yeah, that's an incredible story. I love that you found the strength to leave the great job and the glitzy life and change everything. And you said you went from burned out to, feeling better mentally and physically. Can you actually take us through the signs of burnout, what they are mentally and physically? Because you are probably very attuned to your body and your mind, but a lot of people are not, and they might be experiencing burnout and not knowing about it.
Yeah, great question. So firstly, I'm a pretty happy person normally. I noticed that there's a saying like death by 1,000 cuts, and I really felt that it's something with burnout doesn't happen overnight. Suddenly I'm burnt out. It's a gradual thing. And for me, there was firstly the obvious sign, which is exhaustion. I was so tired. I felt like I had permanent jet lag, but that was because I was doing very weird hours as well. So that was one sign for me. And then even though I was exhausted, because I was so on edge because of waking up early and needing to be on, when it came to going to sleep, I couldn't fall asleep. So there's the underlying agitation that I had because I was like, when am I next going to get a message or need to do something? So there was that. And then, I looked at myself in the mirror and I didn't look good. My skin wasn't glowing. I wasn't in shape. Like, yes, I was still going to the gym and stuff, but I was exhausted. So I couldn't push my body how I normally would. I was always hungry as well. I think that for me was a sign, because my rhythm of sleeping was really out, that I felt like I was always kind of hungry. And I didn't, as I said, look very good. But mentally, I just started to get sadder and sadder and sadder. And like I said, death by 1,000 cuts. It wasn't a thing that happened overnight. It was just a shift in my personality where I didn't really want to go out as much. I kind of kept to myself. I didn't really get happy from things that would normally make me happy because I was exhausted, because I was completely burnt out. And looking back, those were the signs that I should have realized that something was wrong. And it wasn't till I got really sick that it all came to a head. But knowing now that feeling of that change in personality, the change in happiness levels, the way that I looked, all those kind of things, and obviously feeling exhausted, those to me and to anyone listening were the signs of burnout.
Yeah, that's interesting. And besides changing your job and your lifestyle, did you implement any other strategies to heal physically, like nutrition, exercise, or biohacking?
So the things that I did as far as nutrition is concerned, I think especially when I started the new job, it was like normal hours again. And I think that's important. So the rhythm of sleeping became normal. I mean, as you would know, sleep is so important. If I could give anyone any takeout from this, it's like sleep. Getting at least 8 hours a night. If you have to get 7, so be it. But any less than that is really not good for recovery. It's not good for your brain. It's not good for your body. So when I was going back to sleeping normally, it just lifted my mood so much. It made me look so much better. You know, it's really interesting. I had Andrew Huberman on my podcast like a year or two ago. I think it was a year ago. And I said to him, you know, what's the number one thing for skin? And he said sleep. I thought he might say a serum or a cream, or he said, you get enough sleep and you'll see that your skin glows. And I think that's really true. Like when I was burnt out, I wasn't getting enough sleep. So I was back to getting enough sleep. Meditation was the big part for me because it was quieting my mind. My mind was so unbelievably active. So when I woke up every morning, and I barely missed a morning, and I would go into that quiet space of meditation, it was allowing my brain waves to slow down. And then that active mind that I was having would suddenly start to dissipate. And then what happens? You can sleep better. So there's all these knock-on effects by quietening the mind. Obviously as well, I started to, you know, I was never really eating badly, but I probably was overeating a little bit because I was so knocked out with like my circadian rhythm and what was going on with those other hours, that I made sure that I was eating, you know, 3 good meals a day. And I wasn't overeating when I was eating them, and I was going back into the rhythm of doing exercise, and I really got into doing weights and things that I wasn't doing before when I was focusing more on cardio. So it was really those like changes, which honestly, none of them are drastic, but they were enough to get me back on track and to allow myself to feel better inside, which made me look better on the outside as well. So I would highly recommend them to anyone.
Yeah, okay, so no magic pill, but
No.
what's the one daily practice that you think changed your life more than anything else?
I would have to say it would be meditation. Yeah. Meditation for me was absolutely life-changing. And when I first started it, I wasn't good at it. And I don't think anyone's good at meditation when they first start. It's like, you know, a lot of people go into meditation because they have what what they call in India, the monkey mind. And so I would go into meditation and my mind would be racing at 100 miles an hour. This thought would come, that thought, and I would think this is not for me. But I kept at it. And like anything, you know, you start running, you're not amazing at it immediately. But the more that you do it, or the more you cycle, or the more you do basketball, whatever it is, the better you become. You know, I coach a lot of athletes. None of them are good when they first start. But what do? They practice. and it's the practicing that makes you better. And that's what I did with meditation. I just went back into it every single morning. I sat there, even in the times that it was hard. Yes, my mind would wander, but I would bring it back. And the more I did it, the better I got at it. The better I got at it, the quieter my mind became. And it went from something that I didn't love initially to something that I absolutely love. And, I play around with a heap of different meditations now. I've studied Vedic. I, have done guided meditations. There are heaps of different things that anyone can get online. You can find a heap of meditations for free. I sell some on my website. And then even from that, I started doing a lot of mental imagery at the end of my meditations, which I teach a lot of athletes as well as everyday people, where you think of the event that you want to occur in your life and you rehearse it. It's called mental rehearsal. And a lot of athletes and musicians do it. So they're priming their brain for when that event happens, that they've already done it, so they're better at it. And we know now from studies that people that do mental imagery, like if it's a musician or if it's an athlete, if they do that as well as practice, then their ability is 70% better than if they were just to practice alone and not do the mental imagery. So I became really interested in this idea of mental imagery and imagining myself doing things in my life that I wanted to do before it had occurred. And I loved it. I really loved doing that. So then the meditation became really fun. And I think for me, that has been like the number one thing that I could recommend. And obviously I do multiple, like a lot of different things, but meditation would be the most life-changing for me.
Yeah, I would agree. And lots of people are scared of meditation because they think it's like such a big thing. And I've been lately like just practicing with my Aura ring. And when I start getting stressed, because you can see the stress levels, I just close my eyes in front of my laptop and just breathe slowly for 1 minute. And it brings me down straight away. And I don't have to, like people always think,
Beautiful.
I have to sit somewhere for 30 minutes and have my legs crossed and be like a monk. Like people don't realize that it doesn't have to be that difficult.
100%. And, starting off 5-10 minutes a day, whatever it is, and then building up to more if that's what you want to do is perfect. But as you said, just find a space where you feel comfortable in, and it allows like the heart rate to go down, the mind to slow. It's such a great way to curb anxiety or anything that's making you feel a bit disconnected. Going into that really quiet space it's beautiful. It really is.
Yeah, it does really work. But what about ice baths? I've read your book, actually. I didn't read it. I listened to it in a car, and it's really good that you actually narrated it yourself. I love that.
Thank you.
So I've listened to it in a car, and I know that you did Wim Hof and you loved it. But then you also interviewed Stacey Sims in the past, and I didn't listen to that interview, but I know that she doesn't like ice baths for women. So after Wim Hof and after Stacey Sims, do you think that women should ditch ice baths altogether, or what's the
So I think for me, as you would know, I use the example of the ice baths in the chapter where I say the stories that we tell ourselves, and the idea that I was always a very cold person. I still am. And I would do anything I could to stay out of the cold. And I interviewed Wim Hof on my podcast. And then a friend had said to me, oh my God, I heard your interview. I loved it. There's a retreat. And I'm like, are you joking? I'm not going on a Wim Hof retreat where you basically just go into ice baths for 2 days. No, thank you. And then I thought about it more and decided no, maybe this is something I need to change about myself. Being in your comfort zone is never going to get you anywhere. And you know that, and I know that. So one thing I always said with the podcast is if I'm teaching other people to do this stuff, I need to do it too. I really want to be authentic. I don't want to talk the talk and not walk the walk. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to come. And it was in Victoria, and in the midst of winter, it was basically 5 degrees.
Oh my God.
Already freezing. So
that's ridiculous.
Retreat where it's already so cold. And it was so fun. We learned how to do all the breathing and stuff during the day, and I loved that a lot. And then we went into the ice bath part, And I was absolutely beside myself before I went in. And I thought, oh my God, because we waited, I think 4 people went at a time in the different baths. So you had to wait your turn. And as I was waiting, we were doing this kind of, he does like this horse, I think it's called like a horseshoe kind of movement. And I was already freezing. So I was shaking uncontrollably. I hadn't even gotten in the ice bath. And I'm like, I'm going to have a cardiac arrest in that ice bath. This is not for me. And I kind of looked around, and I was by far the smallest, and there was a lot of men there. And I was like, my mind was just like going with the most negative thoughts ever. And then there was this gorgeous guy, and he said to me, he was just like an average looking guy. He hadn't done a lot of the ice bath stuff. I don't think he'd ever done one. He said, look, why don't we do it together? Like, we'll go at the same time. And it was so comforting when he said that. I thought, wow, this is so lovely. And we ended up going in at the same time, and I did it well, and I breathed through it, and you know, all that meditation really worked. I was going into that quiet space. And so I did really enjoy that, because it got me out of my comfort zone. I achieved something that I was so scared of. It's not something I do regularly. I think I've done it like a couple of times since. Interestingly enough, obviously talking to Stacey and her knowing the research, that she doesn't mind cold exposure, but it has to be a certain, she doesn't love it when it's like pure ice. Like we were doing pure ice baths where literally they got the ice and they put it in there. It wasn't like just cold water. So it's not bad to go into cold water, but I think, and someone would just have to correct me on this number, but I think it's something like it needs to be over 7 degrees or something like that. This was definitely about 2 degrees, or, it was very cold. So if I'm going to be honest, the times that I've done it since, I can say that I don't feel like my body loved it. Okay. It definitely, and I mean, I don't think anyone goes in there and goes, wow, this is like the best thing in the world.
I actually do. I love it.
Okay, so you do.
I do ice bath every day in the morning. I have it on my balcony.
Oh, you're amazing. So I think that for me, I could tell like my feet would get super like really start hurting and stuff. Yeah. So I think Stacey also says if your body, you've trusted it to do that and you're actually fine, then that's fine. It's more so, she says, when people are trying it out and they haven't been exposed to that before.
And they're stressing about it.
Yeah, and they're putting the high stress on the body. It's not a good thing. But for someone like yourself that's done it for ages and is like fine with it, then she would say that was fine.
Yeah. No, I was just interested to hear what's your opinion now after the two experiences, because Wim Hof and Stacey are just like polar opposite opinions.
Yes.
Yeah, so you didn't become a lover of ice baths, clearly.
No, I didn't become a lover, but I definitely would want to do it again, or at least do it, go into the cold that's maybe not as cold. I have done that once before, but maybe doing it more. I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. I think, it can be really good.
They're good. You speak in your book about the negativity bias, and it is interesting how us Westerners always choose to focus more on the negative. So like you have a bad day, you lost your wallet, you lost your keys, you fell over, broke your tooth like I just did. But there's 10 other things happen good in a day, but Westerners usually only focus on the bad things and they don't really even register the good things that are happening. Why is that so? Like, why do we do that?
So I think that the mind is set to, from the caveman days, the mind is set to look for the bad rather than the good, right? And we did that way back when because there was a big risk that something could happen, right? There was a tribe of people and they needed to be on alert the whole time in case another tribe came or in case an animal came to eat their food or whatever it is. So back in those days, it was very useful. But now we aren't exposed to things like that constantly. And we know now that if we're constantly in that fight or flight or thinking the worst the whole time, then that's going to not put the right endorphins through our body. And if we're having the hormones of stress come through our body constantly, we know that manifests in disease, because those fight or flight hormones that come on are so wonderful if we need to run away of something, if something bad's happened and we need to dive into action, sure, but it's very short-lived. And a lot of people do live in that case, that high level of stress, and that's when they see their body break down. When you're burnt out, that's the sort of thing that happens to you as well. So ways in which to not do that are through things like gratitude. And it's so simple. And when I teach people about writing in a gratitude journal, or even if they can't be bothered to write in a journal, doing it in their head every day, and slowly exposing the mind to look at the positives in life rather than the negatives. So say, for example, and I only did this actually just on the weekend, I've got so much stuff going on in my life in a great way, but because I'm on a deadline to do quite a few things, I felt very overwhelmed. And I think we've all felt that before, where we've got so much going on that it seems like, wow, this is so much and I don't know where to start. And especially if you're waiting on other people to get back to you and things like that. So I took a deep breath, and honestly, I went into meditation that day, and I thought about the fact that everyone is working with me rather than against me. Because I think the way that people look at things is like, you know, Veronica hasn't gotten back to me, or, oh my goodness, I need to do this by this phase and this person's not helping with this. And I thought, I'm going to flip the switch and turn my mind into the fact that we're all working together for a shared outcome, right? So that was just one way that I did that for myself, and I felt a sense of relief. But if we're looking at a gratitude journal, we write down 5 things every day that brought us joy or that we're grateful for. And what we know about gratitude is it's the fastest way to happiness. So if you are feeling really bad about something, then take that moment to think about something that you're really grateful for. And it's the fastest way to move from a sad emotion to a happy emotion. We all have 5 things to be grateful for.
100%.
It could be that we're grateful for the barista that made our coffee because we had a beautiful conversation with them. And the important thing about gratitude is the why, because the why of why you're grateful for it is what is going to bring out the emotion too. So I'm grateful for my coffee because I'm grateful for the barista because I love talking to her and we have a beautiful time to connect. So that's the why I'm grateful for my coffee. Or maybe it's that I'm grateful for my dog. Why? Because my dog gives me unconditional love. And when I'm ever feeling sad or feeling stressed, I put her on my lap and I pat her, and I know that she's always going to show up for me because she loves me unconditionally. So I think when we talk about gratitude, we forget to talk about the why component. And as I said, it's important to write what you're grateful for and why you're grateful, because the why is going to give you the emotion behind the gratitude part. So it's such an easy thing for us to do. And one thing I also teach people is when we go to sleep at night, sometimes we're thinking about the day and we're not thinking about it in such a positive light. A beautiful way to prime the subconscious mind before sleep is to think about all the things that you're grateful for, all the things that you want to create in your life. And so when we're going to sleep, instead of thinking of the negative things or the things that we're worried about, we're thinking about the things that we're happy about and the things that bring us joy that we want to create in our life. So then when the conscious mind falls asleep and the subconscious mind turns on whilst we're sleeping, those are the last things that we've had in our mind, and then we're setting up the subconscious mind for, which is where, you know, all our belief system comes in. So that is a beautiful way of turning a negative mood into a positive one by using gratitude.
Yeah, that's a great advice. I actually think that most people don't know about the gratitude and the why. I think most people just write, I'm grateful for the barista, but they don't really think or write down the why. And I think that's the key to be successful with the gratitude, hey?
I totally agree. And I find when I teach it, to your point, not many people know about that. And it is the most important part of it because it does build the emotion within you.
Yeah, this is a great tip. I love it. So have you heard, talking about all this, have you heard of the 10-day mental diet?
No.
You haven't? Okay, so when I was going through a lot of negative stuff, like 15 years ago, I had a psychotherapist who is also hypnotherapist and NLP practitioner. He's like all-rounder. And he gave me the 10-day mental diet. And he said, as soon as I have negative thought, I have to, within few seconds, change it to positive thought by taking a spin on it or seeing opportunity or expressing gratitude or just like thinking about affirmation, just like switching from the negative to positive within seconds. And if I can't do it, if I fail, I have to again start from day one. So if I go to the day 8 and then I failed, then I have to again start from a day 1. And that was such a great practice for like turning every negative thought, but not being fake about it, but just really thinking like what I can learn from this, how can I turn it to something positive. And that was really good practice. And I wanted to ask you, if you had to do a 10-day mental diet, what would you implement in it? What would be your go-to mindset technique?
I think similar to what you were talking about, I teach a lot of people the same thing in the sense of what I say is, though, have your positive thought already. So say the negative thought comes up, replace it with a positive feeling thought. So what happens is people kind of scramble a bit and they don't know what they want to think of, and they need to think of it, as your psychotherapist said, and what I teach people is straight away. So say your positive thought is your husband, and your love that you have for him, then as soon as the negative thought comes up, straight away you would think of your husband. And you would have that same thought to go to every time. So a lot of people ask, oh, do I choose something new every time? I say no. So then, because you're scrambling if you're trying to choose something new, have that positive feeling thought already as your go-to thought every single time. And as we know, I think we have like 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day, and 80% of those are repetitive and majority of them are negative. Knowing that, it allows us, okay, the negative thought comes up, bang, I'm moving to the positive feeling thought. And we can do that 60, 70 times a day when we first start out. But the more that you do it, as we know through neuroscience, the brain starts to rewire itself, and then it'll automatically start moving to the positive instead of the negative. The thing is, we need to constantly be checking ourselves because it easily falls back into the negative. So it's a habit that we need to keep doing the whole time. So when I talk in my book about conscious awareness, it's one of the first chapters, because if we're not conscious of the thoughts we're thinking and the words we're saying and our actions, then we can't change anything. And so as I mentioned earlier, for change to occur, we need to change. And the great way of doing that is being very conscious of the way that we're thinking. So that would be my first one. It would be having that positive feeling thought, knowing what it is already. As soon as that negative thought comes up, we don't let it pass us by. We go straight to the positive feeling thought, and we keep on keeping on with that.
No, not a great tip. I like it. So simple, but most people wouldn't think of that. See, and then I go always thinking about something different, new and positive, and it was hard. But it was a hard workout for my brain. But yeah, this is a good tip. I'll try that. So what do you think would be the best technique for motivation?
So I think as far as motivation is concerned, like we find motivation when we're really following our purpose, right? And so a lot of people say, oh, I don't know what I want my purpose to be, or, I'm not sure of any of this kind of stuff. Like, where do I start? And I always say, think about what you like doing when you were young. Think about what you would do if money wasn't a question. Like, you're not just in a job because you need to have financial gain with it. And as soon as you write down those things, you start building a puzzle of things that potentially could be your purpose. When we have a purpose in our life, purpose and meaning, then we find motivation. You want to wake up in the morning because you have a purpose, and you're motivated by something. So I feel that even if it's just nothing to do with your job, and you might just love doing a certain type of exercise, and that's what gets you up in the morning, then that's the thing that will start motivating you to want to do whatever it is. Yeah. So I find that motivation comes from a love or a like of something. And also, it can be even in a sense of you're not happy with where you are where you are at in your life and you want to change your life. Okay, so what about it do you want to change? Write it down and then allow that to be the catalyst to move forward. And again, you're giving yourself purpose and meaning because you're changing direction, right? So it's those sort of things that if we sit down, we write it out, what do we want to do within our life? What do we want to change? What do we want to gain? How do we want to help others? Then that's where our motivation comes from to move forward.
Yeah, that's great. And so if someone can't figure it out by themselves, do you personally actually do one-on-one coaching, or would you recommend for someone to
I
go
do.
to?
Yeah, I do one-on-one coaching. I mean, you can go to my website and there's a form. I do one-on-one mindset coaching. And I suppose if people are really stuck and they can't get in with me, this is something that a psychologist could talk about, or a psychotherapist would be able to talk about with you as well, to be able to give you more motivation. And then again, listening to podcasts like yours or mine, they can be very inspiring. Like, we do podcasts, so we hope that people are able to change their lives. It might be even reading a book that you find has something within it that allows you to be motivated to do whatever it is that you want to do, or listen to a podcast. Those are some things that you can do to kind of really be able to get more information that allows you to become more motivated, that allows you to then go and be able to change whatever it is.
Yeah, we're really lucky with all the information nowadays. Like 15 years ago when I needed it, there weren't really podcasts, or not that many. But I still think even nowadays when you have so much information, sometimes you're stuck and you just need to talk to someone. That's a person, and it's not ChatGPT.
Yeah, and sometimes exactly with my mindset clients, you want that personal kind of touch, right? So you can tell them your story and they can give you tips, and that's what I do. So sometimes I agree. I think talking with someone is just really nice, and you have the personal relationship.
Yeah, I think so. How old are your kids?
They are 10 and 12 now.
And do you teach them any mindset techniques?
I don't force anything upon them, but I've taught them meditation. They haven't meditated for ages. I've taught them about mental imagery, and obviously from a very basic level of it, I've taught them about that. And I tell them a lot about conscious awareness in a way that's easy for them to understand. So if they're stressed out, sometimes my daughter gets a little bit stressed out with tests or things that she has. She's my 10-year-old. I talk to her about the things that you can control in your life and the things that you can't control, and the idea of worrying and the way of changing your mind when you're worrying about maybe a test the next day. Again, these things that you and I have just spoken about, ways to shift your mind into something else that's going to bring you more joy. Because as we know, worrying doesn't get you any further into solving the thing that you're worrying about. So I teach her ways to try and not ruminate over certain things and move the mind from worry to joy. So just little techniques like that. And one thing I've taught them both, and they're actually excellent at this from a very young age, I taught them about gossiping. And I teach this a lot if I do keynotes to a lot of businesses, where sometimes we don't realize that gossiping is a really acidic, negative thing that we do. And when I was talking about conscious awareness, I talk about the words that we say not only to ourselves, so the negative chatter, but also the negative chatter to others. And there's a very big difference if you're in a workplace and someone comes to you and they just need some help and they have a problem or issue with someone. There's a very different kind of energy that comes with that than if someone comes to you and they're just saying very mean things about someone else. And you can hear that they could be jealous, or there's something that's not nice or kind about the way that they're talking. And so I've taught my kids this from a very young age. And as we know that the schoolyard is the breeding ground for gossip and things like that. But I've taught them why gossip is not nice. And I'm a true believer that if someone gossips about you, then if they gossip, with you, they're going to gossip about you as well.
100%.
And I've really taught that to my kids. So they realize that if they say bad things about people, then those people, that the person they're gossiping with will probably say bad things about them. And so it's that has really stuck with them, and I think has allowed them, and hopefully continues to not engage in those sort of practices. And it can be hard for them. I mean, I don't think my son, that's not so much of a male thing when they're very young, but it's very innate in girls. So, it's been a very interesting journey, and one that I'm so proud of my daughter for not indulging in.
Yeah, that's beautiful that you teach your kids. They're very lucky. And I think that gossiping is very toxic, but I also think that a lot of people connect through gossiping.
Totally.
Because, it's like the common ground. We gossip together about someone else. It's very toxic, and it's really sad that adults do it. I get it in kids, but lots of adult people do it. And yeah.
Oh, they do. And we also connect through suffering.
Yeah.
And there's one thing, again, to share stories and learn, but there's another thing where we're just, woe is me, and then the other person is woe is me, and we're woeing together about all the bad things. And I'm really conscious of if I feel like, oh no, I've kind of gotten into a conversation where we're talking negatively, not about someone, but about things in the world or whatever it is, if we stay there too long, it doesn't make me feel good.
No.
And so I'm very conscious of, sure, we can touch on some things that are happening in the world, but I want to move on to more positive things, because you won't even realize that you walk away from a conversation with someone when it's been talking about mutual likes and interests and passions and information, where you walk away and you go, God, that was so lovely to meet that person. And what a great conversation. Rather than if you connect on negative, it's like, yes, you connect, but you walk away just feeling not quite happy and a little bit down. And so I'm very conscious about that when I'm talking with people as well.
Yeah, I don't know if you realize that, and it's probably, if you don't, it's going to help you in your coaching. This is very Eastern European thing to do.
Really?
Like, the negative talk, I had to unlearn it. I never liked it in Eastern Europe. That's one of the main things I didn't like growing up there, but I was getting sucked into it. And it's kind of like when you meet someone in the street and they ask you, how are you? You just start saying, oh, my boss is annoying, my husband is this and that. And you just start complaining about all these things, because if you say like, oh, no, I'm great and everything is good, people will actually be upset at you and say that you're fake, and then you're boasting and you're bragging. It's a thing in Eastern Europe.
So I actually know this because my grandparents are Austrian and Polish, so Eastern Europe. And that's the way then my parents grew up, where they were like, no, you can't say too many positive things, because then people are going to get jealous of you and it'll be like the evil eye or something like that.
Yeah.
And I had to unlearn that and be like, if you're always indulging in that negative just to relate to people, it's going to become your reality, because that's all you're talking about. So I completely understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's why I love it in Australia, because we ask people, how are you? And they actually say something good. So
yeah, America is great at that as well.
Yeah.
They're very much talk about their achievements, and not in a bragging way, but in a way that is very inspiring, and they're just telling you what's been happening.
yeah, and it's nice to be able to say things that you've done well or that make you happy, instead of thinking about all the bad things I have to say now just so I don't look bad,
Absolutely, I agree.
Yeah. I know that you interviewed lots of interesting people, like you had Andrew Huberman, Stacey Sims, the list goes on. What is the most insightful thing you've learned from one of those interviews with all the experts and famous, successful people?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I mean, God, there's so much stuff that I've learned. And I think that, look, I mean, obviously a lot of the experts, it's interesting about the ice bars and, not fasting before you train and things like that. I mean, that really has been also life-changing. Like, I've made those changes in my life. So that to me has been very interesting. But I think it circles back to something that so many people who have been on my podcast, so I definitely isn't just one person. I think it's nearly every second person that comes on says this. And there was a whole chapter in my book about being your authentic self. If you are living a life that's true to you, and obviously one that's kind, as I mentioned earlier, then you will get so much more out of life like that. And I was only talking about it with someone the other day about how when we're young, we just want to fit in. So we want to buy the same clothes as our friends. We want to have the same hair as our friends. We want to do everything the same. And I get that. But as we grow older and we kind of know what we like and what we don't like, and we show up as the most authentic version of ourselves, that's when we'll find true happiness. You know, the people that I've coached in the past or that I've seen that really have struggled in life is when they're not true to themselves and they're living a life because their mother or father wanted them to be a lawyer and all they wanted to do was be a teacher, or they're a chameleon around different people because they don't feel like just being their true honest personality will win them friends, so they need to change their spots depending on who they're with. That becomes exhausting, and it's also very empty. And I think when you show up as your authentic self, as a lot of these thought leaders have said, and I have found to be true to me, then that's where the happiness lies. And you know that people love you, warts and all. They love you for your synchronicities. They love you for doing whatever it is you wanted to achieve in life. That's how you've attracted your friends, because they know you for you. That's where you'll find true happiness.
Yeah, I agree. You have to be yourself, otherwise life is too hard and miserable.
Yeah.
But we have got lots of good advice there today, and I loved all the practical, simple tips. However, if you only could give one advice, the advice to everyone out there, what would that be?
I think something that I always think about is swim your own race, which means like don't look around at what everyone else is doing and get distracted by that or let it bring you down. You're here for the time on earth you're supposed to be here to do what was meant for you. And there's always going to be someone that's achieved more than you and someone that's achieved less than you. But try not to compare yourself to other people. Just swim your own race and do the best version that you can do of whatever it is that you want. And if you do that, again, that's where happiness will be found and where you'll be able to, you know, then go on and help other people or whatever it is you want to do. But don't be distracted by what everyone else is doing. Just really concentrate on what it is you want to do and be the best version of that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you. Last question. What is your favorite book and why?
What I love is Deepak Chopra, seven was the number, 7 Spiritual Laws of Success. And I love that book because I listened to it on audio and it's only like an hour and a half or something like that. Deepak, who I've interviewed on my podcast before, he actually wrote it on a trip, I think, from New York to Sydney. That's all the time that it took him to write this like New York Times bestseller. And it really goes through all the things that set you up for a good life. It's the law of non-attachment. I think there's something in there about authenticity, like we've spoken about. But it's all the laws of success where if you do them in your life, you're setting yourself up for a good life. So I read that book so many years ago and it's such a simple read. And I found it to be really quite life-changing for me in that it really made me understood these simple laws that I then put within my life to be able to make great change. And I highly recommend it.
Amazing. I'll get the book straight away. Well, thank you so much for making the time for us. There was lots of insightful advice and I'm going to implement a lot of it myself.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been so great to chat to you.
Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you for listening. Let us know in the comments below what topics interest you and don't forget to follow us.